everybody, welcome in. Tuesday edition. Had some technical difficulties in the studio yesterday, so my name is Jesse Montano. This is Meghan Angley, and we're not in the studio. We are at the Avs practice facility, bringing you another episode of Guerilla Sports Off Ice. Got a great show for you guys today. Going to unpack everything that we saw from Ball Arena last night. We're going to dig back into that middle six, and specifically that third line, Ross Colton, Jack Drury, Victor Olofsson. Want to revisit that conversation a bit from last week. We're going to start also to talk a little bit about an approaching trade deadline that is coming up maybe quicker than you realized. And then we're also going to hear from Avalanche head coach Jared Bednar as we continue the never-ending hunt for an improved power play here, Meghan, for the Colorado Avalanche. We got a great show for you guys. Do want to start by reminding you about our great friends over at Furniture Row. Furniture Row is a family-owned business, and you can feel it from the moment you walk in. They make furniture shopping easy, no pressure, no runaround, and everything you need is right in one place. Living room, dining room, bedroom, and even outdoor furniture. They've got a huge selection, and their prices are tough to beat, and a staff that actually knows what they are talking about. Real furniture, real value, Furniture Row. I also want to remind you guys about our friends over at RefiJet. Did you guys know that you could refinance your auto loan with RefiJet? You could save around $150 every single month, all with just a soft credit pull and zero hassle. Meghan, it's lower payments, it's flexible terms. I could use some cash back in my pocket, and I'm sure you could as well. Head on over refijet.com/sports. See if they can't help you save you some money, or like I said, maybe from your car's equity, you can get some cash back in your pocket. The best way to support us and this show and all of our coverage is by showing love to our partners. So head on over refijet.com/sports. It is the faster, easier way to refinance. Hey everybody, welcome in. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley. This is Guerilla Sports Off Ice. We are here at the Avalanche practice facility today. An optional skate just wrapped up. We heard from Jared Bednar. We were able to talk to a couple of guys in the room. Nice day around the rink. Meghan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. It was a late game last night, a late start to begin with. Then you get overtime. So we definitely got out of there a little bit later than normal. So I could maybe use like an extra hour of sleep. But otherwise, I'm great.
I think, too, I wasn't sure where the off day would be. So it was an optional today at noon, day off for the team tomorrow. I think that's going to be huge for them to reset, rest, recharge ahead of Friday's game. I think the result from the Toronto game is disappointing in a way that carries more weight than usual, I would say, only because this is a team that has lost so few games this year. I think that the day off tomorrow will be very helpful for them.
Well, it's funny because, to your point, they've accumulated wins so consistently this year that, like, there's almost a little bit of a, what do we do here? Like, when we were going to the locker room after a loss, last night was definitely just a little bit different than what it has been. And I think not only with what you were just saying, but just the fact that, yes, they're in the middle of a long homestand, but these guys get 3 days here at home where, yes, they'll be in the building for meetings and for practice and things like that. But then they get to go home, spend the afternoon with their family, their friends, kids, all of that. Want to give a shout out to our guy, Evan Rowell, who asked a great question today to Jared Bednar just about that, about having, family and kids at home, and how, on an older, more veteran team, maybe that can be a nice distraction for the guys. So long-winded way of saying I'm with you. I think these are going to be valuable days for these guys. Yeah,
I think a lot of athletes at high levels in particular are creatures of habit too. And so I think being able to find that routine when you're at home, even just down to having all your products, having all your stuff. It's got to make a huge difference, because I'm just a non-athletic regular person and I love my stuff.
I tell my wife that all the time, like when we go on a trip or whatever, and like coming home, and like truthfully, I've even talked about that when we're traveling for playoffs or just on the road or whatever. Like, yeah, it's it's nice and you get to try different food and be sometimes a nice hotel and stuff, but like none of my stuff's here.
Yeah,
I just want my stuff.
Unless you're Brent Burns.
Unless
then you always have your stuff.
Unless you're Brent Burns, then you've always got your stuff. Well, Megan, let's we talked about how a couple days off here would be good for these guys after a disappointing loss. We don't have to go by it play by play necessarily, but just let's start with what were your thoughts last night. I thought Jared Bednar describing it as up and down, good start, decent finish with some really not good in the middle was a great assessment. Like I said, on kind of the broad strokes. How did you see it?
I see it similar to how I saw the difficult road trip out east with the Florida teams to finish it out, because those were all playoff caliber teams. Obviously, Toronto comes in having won 3 straight. They have been playing really great hockey, and I think this is going to be kind of the lesson for the back half of the year is the Avs have established themselves through this halfway point as the best team in the league. And so every team coming in to play the Avs knows that they need to bring their best, no exceptions. And I think that's true of the game that Toronto played. And what I like is this is good prep for the playoffs in ways. Parker Kelly was the one who brought it to my attention. But it's similar to playoff hockey then, where the margin for error is very thin. And so it's not so much, obviously playing a full 60 consistently through 82 games is very difficult. But when you're looking at like a 7-game series, it is important. It is the difference then of if you bring your C game even for a single shift, that can be the thing that costs you a series. And so just looking at the Toronto game, Avs start with really great energy jump, generating some dangerous chances. It even starts to dwindle at the end of the first period. But it's such a contrast how that period started even to how it ended. And then the second period, I would say that they just survived. They weren't thriving in that period. It wasn't necessarily a D or an F game. It just wasn't elite. And then
can I just real quick, I just want to interrupt to add to the point that you're making. And it's just, with the teams are bringing their best game. I also thought it was really interesting. I don't know if you saw any of what Toronto, the Maple Leafs, were tweeting after the game. Nothing like talking smack, but like that was a big, like they were hyped to win that game.
Yeah.
And so where I'm going with this is when a team like that is having the second period that Toronto does, that means something on that bench. Like, hey, this is the best team in the league. We got them on their heels a bit here. And I just wanted to add that in addition to getting everyone's best game, when teams feel like either they beat you or they feel like they're getting the best of you, like that's energizing for these teams.
I was just thinking of the Minnesota game on the road, the shootout, and what that meant to a young goaltender in a Minnesota team. Like, and I'm not taking a sideswipe. I appreciated those comments. Anyways.
I'm with you.
It carries a lot of weight then, these games for the teams playing opposite the Colorado Avalanche. And similarly, too, with how the third period started, I had some nerves because I could tell Toronto was feeling it after the Bobby McMahon goal in the second. And so it felt important that the Avs reset the tone and then put the game back within their grasp and tilt the ice just a little bit more back in their favor, even though it wasn't this huge difference in terms of maybe the shots that were generated through that point, though Toronto was leading in the shots battle and Toronto was blocking shots. This is, defensively, they were doing a lot to make it difficult for the Avs to create at will the way that they like to. And so it was important then for the Avs to get back in the game decisively. They couldn't just sort of meander their way through the rest of that game, the rest of that period, and it started with the top guys. So, this feels different from the result of the Florida games on the road. Though I thought the Tampa game was also really close. This Toronto game felt really close. That's why it's kind of a good taste of what playoff hockey would be like, where it is going to come down then to a really paper-thin margin. And so I liked that in the third period, after just surviving the second, the top guys leading the charge, some really great shifts from Nathan MacKinnon, that line in particular. I don't blame officiating here. I talked to you in the press box. I didn't see the hold on the Marty Netchus call, then making for 4-on-4 hockey, which Toronto immediately capitalizes on. That could have been a demoralizing and deflating moment.
And I just want to add, I also thought there was and hey, this happens a lot in games. There's a nice little pick play set by Toronto to disrupt Josh Manson's path to Austin Matthews, which gave Austin Matthews that extra foot and a half, extra half second, which a guy like him, that's all he needs.
Oh, certainly. And tread minor. Like, Trent Miner is in net. It's a hard job. I actually think he came up with really big saves in the first period on the kill in particular, because that penalty kill unit just was not it for the first PK. It was great in the second. They struggled on the first, and Trent Miner bailed them out with a lot of saves. So it's one of those things, like, I get that they don't get the winning result, and in OT, off a rush chance, it feels like you could look to the goaltender and blame him kind of harshly then. I think that Trent Miner, not so different from how we've talked about some of the games Wedgwood has given the Avs, he gave them a chance to win.
That's all you're asking.
That's all you're asking. So looking at then the 4v4 goal, Austin Matthews, I think the response from the top guys is an important one. It speaks to their maturity in a lot of ways, because, again, it could have felt demoralizing, deflating. They could have, spiraled out a little bit, like, well, that wasn't even a great call. What the heck is going on? And they didn't let it shake them off their game. Instead, they brought just a little bit more of a push. And it results, too, in a kind of redemptive fashion. Marty Netchus being the one to slip into the net front to get this tying goal. And so I thought it was a really great Marty Netchus night.
I agree.
In a lot of ways. And that kind of a play is one I've been dying to see more of from him, because he is such a great skater. He can slip in and out of traffic then more than most guys. And I don't know that he leverages it to the best of his ability as much as he should, because those are the dangerous areas of the ice. There's a price to pay in getting there, and you have to do more to protect the puck when you're there. In this instance, it's just completing the play, and so I like that he's not having to battle his way at the net front and letting Toronto know his next move. I think that just slipping in at the last second is what makes it possible, and very few skaters can do that. So I think that the high skill there, and then the cross-slot seam pass on the McCarr goal.
Pass. I was going to say beautiful pass on the Netchus goal as well, but holy smokes, the play that Netchus makes.
Yes.
Yeah, the Nate pass to Netchus is really nice. The play that Marty makes earlier in the game is, we'll be seeing that for the rest of the week on highlight reels.
That's what I'm saying, great Marty game. And to your point with McKinnon too, like, there's a chemistry that can be found between Netchus and McKinnon that you get wildly different results sometimes. Sometimes it's a matter of them not finding each other on the ice because their brains are working a little too quickly. But those moments, and I've seen enough of them going back to when Marty was acquired last year, that I think these are two highly skilled players who see the game in a very similar way, and that's the kind of magic that can happen.
Absolutely. And it, hold on. It's going to come back to me here. Oh, well, so you mentioned that Toronto it seemed like they were really feeling it coming out of the second intermission. And then they get that goal from Austin Matthews late. And I just wanted to double down a bit on what you mentioned about the maturity and the composure of the Avs top guys, combined with the skill and ability for them to make the plays.
Yeah.
But, again, I think that's been something that has maybe been a little bit underrated about this Avs team this year, is we focus so much on when they're dominating in control of games, and we don't talk enough about, okay, well, what about this segment here where they maybe, found themselves on their heels a bit, but we're able to come out of that and not just find a way to scratch and claw a goal out, but to find a way to tip momentum back in their direction, get back to their game, and then put a puck in the net. Which is a crazy thing to say out loud, 13 years removed from the 2012-2013 season where, Patrick Waugh's first year, and this team won a boatload of games, won their division, but there was a lot of, late game comebacks and heroics, and they're never out of it. But, again, when you were in those moments, you looked at the underlying numbers, and it was like, how are they doing this?
Right.
This is not that. This is a team that is finding ways to take games that are out of control, get them back in their control, and start to impose their will. And it's why they've been so successful in getting games to overtime, finding ways to scratch out points. This is just a group that, like, it's a super cliche, and I hate to be like, they just will not allow themselves to be denied. And I think that moment last night with whatever it is, 9 and some change left, when Austin Matthews scores that goal, it would have been really easy for them to say, it hasn't been a great night, that call, like you said, that call sucked. Trent's in net, whatever. But no, they really kind of found a way to control the last handful of minutes of that game and get the score equalized. And I just think that that's not something that I want to continue underselling, because their ability to regroup and get back on the attack, I think, has been extremely impressive this year.
It's a good test, too, because this comeback effort is launched late in the game, in a third period. And so, in thinking to the way things collapsed in Game 7 for the Avs, Cale Makar specifically used the word composure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sometimes
Great call
you
out.
do just run out of runway, and that is the way the game breaks. But I think it's important to see them launching that kind of a comeback with the composure that they had, because you see them with the power play, just when they're trying to force it to come a little bit too much, gripping their sticks too tightly, it doesn't always work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think seeing their ability to do it, in this case, finding the tying goal in the third period, is significant. These will be moments for them to draw back on in a playoff series, because going back to the thin margins for error and the need for composure at all times, even late in games, these are all things that are going to be demanded of them.
All right, so this wasn't where I was going to go with all this, but honestly, I just found that to be a really interesting point you just made about going back to last season, and like, geez, it's almost at the point where like we're seeing the lessons that were learned in that series play out in front of us in real time, basically. And like, that was, hey, games started to get away from you. We find ourselves behind, calm, composed, let's get back on our toes, get back in this game. That's a great call. I really hadn't thought about that. We've talked about how that series from last year, you can tell, has stung this group.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, we as media keep drawing back to the way things fell apart against Dallas, but I know it's felt around the room, and I think that's why there is that pressure around the power play to perform right now in season.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a great call out. Last thing from last night, and then we'll move on. Trent Miner gets his second straight start, second straight game where he at least picks up points. Look, you just got to give Trent Miner a massive amount of credit here. This is a guy that 2 seasons ago was playing for the Utah Grizzlies, at least in some capacity, maybe 3 seasons. Put in a lot of work within this organization. Nice to not only see him, get that rewarded a bit, but like gets a nice vote of confidence here. Back-to-back starts, a reward for the shutout. Yes, Avs goalies are a little bit dinged up right now as well. So that, plays in Trent's favor, but just wanted to get your thoughts on what we saw to Trent Miner for 2 games.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about Trent Miner's place in the organization too, because, Nabokov's still a year away from being a part of their goaltending depth. And then the goalies that they bring on for depth this year are young. Like in Kyle Kaiser's case, he's sort of in a similar places where Trent Miner has been, and kind of grinding it out between the East Coast and the AHL. And so I say this very respectfully. That wasn't, next man up. Isaac Posh signed out of college. He's a rookie goaltender making his first full pro season right now, getting acclimated. So it was Trent Miner. There was a trust then that if they need to go to their third string, a very real possibility every team should consider, they knew it was Trent Miner, and they were okay with that. We've typically seen them instead go out and get a more veteran goaltender to kind of share the load in Loveland, but instead, in taking that chance on Isaac Posh, which I find super interesting, it was giving this vote of confidence then to Trent Miner and kind of breaking from the mold of what they'd been doing with their goalies. And I think a lot of that points to a trust in Trent Miner, who has been patient in coming up through the ranks with the organization, has had the right attitude around seizing the opportunities when they come, but recognizing that he has to fight for it every step of the way. I love that Jared Bednar talked about how every guy who comes up from the East Coast to this league has to be a battler. And it's true of Trent Miner, because I think back to when it was like Justus Saarinen and Jonas Johansson in net in Loveland, and maybe they'd be dealing with a stomach bug or a little banged up, and Trent Miner would get called up, he'd have great games. But it'd only be onesie, twosies before he was back in the East Coast, and he'd do everything asked of him, and the opportunity just wasn't there. Anyways, you can tell I've been really excited to see Trent Miner seize this opportunity. Yeah. And it is because he's very competitive. He works very hard. I think he kind of slipped under people's radar then in being a serious goaltending prospect that can help them out because Nabokov isn't here yet. Right. So it's all significant. And I think I'm just very proud of Trent Miner.
Well, and you and I talked about this, maybe it was even yesterday at the game. And like, look, this is just reality of Trent, who he is as a player. He doesn't look like an NHL goaltender at times. Like he's a smaller guy. He has, his gear's a little bit bigger. And like you and I were saying yesterday, like that's all stuff that's curated, that he's found that this is how he likes to play and this is how he likes his gear to fit for the way that he plays and all that stuff. Optically, he doesn't look, do you know what I mean? Like, and I'll draw a parallel here from someone that I've talked with people about who's in the NHL, has a ton of success. Calvin Pickard is another guy who a little bit of a battler, right? Who's been an AHL kind of up and down guy who doesn't have the cleanest form, looks like he doesn't look like Carey Price and Patrick Waugh out there, but finds a way to get it done. And I think that's a little bit of what Trent has too. So I just wanted to, call that out of like, didn't always get his opportunities, maybe wasn't always taken seriously as a goalie prospect. And there's a few things that factor into that. Either way, doesn't matter for Trent Miner. He's proving all those wrong, that he is a legitimate goalie prospect, and that he can give the Avs quality starts if they, get to that point, with which, no disrespect to Trent Miner, I'm sure the Avs are praying that they don't find themselves in that situation.
Right.
But if you do, Trent Miner can give you back-to-back starts against some pretty good teams and give you quality results.
That was the other thing that was significant in my eyes, too. Like, this was a hot Toronto team coming into the game, and there was enough trust in Trent Miner to give him that back-to-back start against a good Toronto team. So I think that's a testament to the respect relationship that he's built with the organization through that point. Totally see what you're saying about the body language in net, too. I think, too, even criticisms of Justus Annunen, who is incredibly athletic and fit, but has softer features in his face, and people assume that meant he couldn't be a highly athletic goaltender. So it's funny.
It's funny, and it's unfortunate. Have you ever seen Moneyball? Brad Pitt? Oh, wow. That's so surprising because you would love it.
I think you've actually specifically told me you need to see it. You would love it because it has analytics, right?
It's about like the popularization of analytics in at least baseball. But when Billy Beane, Brad Pitt's character, and Jonah Hill's character are first like introducing this like new concept of how they can evaluate players to the scouting staff, like they interrupt this conversation with like them talking about like, oh, that guy, like just all superficial things. Oh, he's single. He has an ugly girlfriend, means he has no confidence. And I'm making all this point.
Okay.
It's not me saying anything about anyone's girlfriend, but my point is like there has been for a long time in sports things that are levied against players fairly or unfairly.
Right.
And the way they look, the gear they use, the way they stand, like that is held against players. And the point that they make in that scene in Moneyball is like scouts find all kinds of crazy reasons to say why either they like a guy or don't like a guy. Coaching staff, same thing, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like I said, Trent Miner gave you 2 quality starts, and one of them came against Austin Matthews and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And my last thought on Trent Miner, I was secretly rooting for him to shut out Austin Matthews last night so that he could have, I played against Alex Ovechkin, didn't give him a goal, and Austin Matthews didn't give him a goal. Didn't work out that way, obviously, but that was what was going through my head for Trent last night was that'd be nice if he could keep Austin Matthews off the score sheet.
Okay, 2 more things in the Toronto game. One, just giving Trent some credit through 2 of the penalty kills, especially 2 of the normal penalty kills, 5 shots on goal, all of them came on that first penalty kill. and 3 of them being high danger chances, 2 of them kind of back-to-back rebound opportunities that Trent Miner had the saves on. So he was tested early, he delivered, and I think the PK did a great job to eat up time. Remember Josh Vanson's stick handling below the goal line? Super fun on that second kill.
Full-on roller hockey penalty kill, just possession.
It was great. So that was just a side note. And the other note was the way Toronto gets their goals in this game is weird. Like it comes from a 4v4 opportunity that like maybe wasn't called. We just don't fully see the hold. Okay. Yep. The other one is the Avs win the ozone draw.
Yeah.
And still somehow, and look, there's a weird decision I don't fully understand that allows the breakaway opportunity. But typically you just don't see that kind of a breakaway then on a draw that you win. And then the other one's an own goal. So it's also just like from the Trent Miner perspective, and also, yeah, Toronto's hot, but I don't know. The Avs didn't make them earn it. Here's the problem. The Avs didn't make them earn it, and Toronto did. Toronto made Colorado earn it. So that was the difference in the game for me. It's pretty simple. The team that deserved to win won, but it was close, so I'm glad the Avs came away with a point, and there's certainly learning lessons inside of that.
Not often you see an ozone face-off win that leads to a breakaway against, but that was what we had last night. All right, and again, this is another one that, like, we're not going to go fully deep dive into all this because we talked about them last week, and there's been 2 games that I think have yielded varying results. For the third line of the Colorado Avalanche. And when we say third line, we're referring to Ross Colton, Jack Drury, and Victor Olofsson. Obviously, over the course of a game, lines get scrambled a bit, things like that. Guys play with different players. But we talked about it on Friday, saying, look, we think a lot of the results that this line is driving are positive. Or they're doing a lot of what is being asked of them. Is the production maybe right where you want it to be? Maybe not. Maybe not right where you want it to be, but that's all right. Well, they come out on Saturday. Victor Olofsson scores a goal, and a nice goal for him, too. Kind of I don't necessarily want to say muck and grind goal, but like not the typical Victor Olofsson snapping a shot, high glove. Gets a goal. Ross Colton has a couple points, almost scores a goal of his own. Did Jack Drury score in that game, or am I one game late?
I believe he had at least an assist.
They all run together at a certain point in the season, folks. Either way, last week Jack Drury scores a big goal. It was in Carolina. I'm sorry, so I'm a little bit off.
No, but he should have gotten an assist on the Olofsson goal.
Okay, perfect.
In the CBJ game.
Perfect. So again, they all find a way. We talked about the good things they were doing away from the score sheet. Well, suddenly they're all on the score sheet. Things feel a little bit better. Hey, Ross had a good game there. Victor Olofsson gets that monkey off his back. And then I'm not going to say that they had a bad night last night, but definitely just maybe not quite as effective as they were on Saturday. Those 3 in particular, and if you want to dive in on any one of them in particular, go for it. What did you see, not just last night, but this weekend, maybe since our last show with the third line there?
Yeah, it's tough because you're right. Side by side, like Columbus game was such a good case for the third line. And then in the Toronto game where they come up a goal short, not them specifically, the team, you maybe then would have wanted the depth scoring to be a part of the equation because it really was led by the top guys in the Toronto game. And what's an important distinction too is with some of the injuries, because Ross Colton's been elevated to the second line, I think that instant boost in his production is a little bit born from he does seem to get a jump in his game when he's back with the top 6 guys. In this case, he's playing on the wing of Nichushkin and Nelson, and those are guys who are hot right now. I think the way they play really complements Ross Colton. So it's not to take away from Colton getting some scoring. It's just like to point out that seems to be the thing that activated him. And then it makes the production from Olofsson Drury on a line that now has Parker Kelly just temporarily interesting to me that I think Evan was talking about how Jared Bednar likes to work in duos, right? And I think right now, like Nichushkin and Nelson are kind of a paired bond. Do not separate it, right? I think that he's been wanting to see consistently Drury and Olofsson because Drury, it reminds me of the way in which Logan O'Connor helped to elevate Alex Newhook's game once upon a time. Like just in winning battles, coming up with pucks, you're going to set guys like Olofsson up for more offensive opportunities, but you're also going to rub off on him. And so I think Olofsson is getting a little bit more engaged in the fight to help win some of those pucks back as well because of the way that Drury likes to play. Kelly, honestly, it helps to be an extension of that too. And I think when Ross Colton was on that line in this recent stretch before the production got to translate because he got put on the second line, I think we were starting to see them drive really good possession results consistently. That I think it was going to break offensively for them soon anyways. It just kind of got broken up because of some of the injuries. And it's just been tough that like I'm weighing a few different things in the conversation. I'm worried about Ross Colton. I'm not super worried. I'm worried, though, that it seems to inspire his best hockey and render him most effective almost only when he's elevated to playing in the top six.
So let's pause here. And truthfully, we can honestly just do the rest of the conversation on this. I see a fit for Jack Drury on the fourth line, post-deadline. I think Victor Olofsson becomes your Andre Burakovsky equivalent, where you know what he can give you and may end up, depending on where things land with this roster post-deadline, maybe a guy like Olofsson finds himself as a healthy scratch here and there, similarly to the way that Burakovsky did in 22. I think Ross Colton's a really good player. I like Ross Colton a lot. I think he's a great guy in the room. I think he gets along with the guys really well. And to your point, when you elevate him with that second line, it drives really nice, really good results. Meghan, I'm worried about Ross Colton, not what he's necessarily doing on the ice. I'm just starting to look at this group and I just say, I don't know where he fits because it doesn't seem like he's as effective on the third line, especially when he's in the middle. And then it also feels like even when he's on the wall in that bottom six, the cast is almost too much of a rotation for him to find the consistency that I think he needs and that I think he likes in his game. So I'm just starting to sit here and we're going to round out the show talking about, and we're going to do it briefly. This is not going to be a trade speculation show, but we're going to start opening this door of, hey, there's actually a secret sooner kind of trade deadline adjacent that's coming up. And then coming out of the Olympic break, we're right there. And I'm just starting to wonder, is Ross Colton going to find himself in these conversations because they just can't find a spot where it's like, yep, that's what we want out of Ross Colton.
You know what's tough about it too is it's not as if the fit is a mismatch entirely.
Right.
There is still a lot of great fit. It's just when you know what he's capable of, then you want to get the best out of him always. And just getting good out of him on the third line, for example, makes you feel like you've left a little bit on the table then. And so with Ross Colton, the thing I want to say is I think that he does ultimately have the right attitude. Like, he is still playing a heavy checking game when he's on the third line. And that's why I think he prefers to be on the wing, because I think he feels he can be more involved on the forecheck when he is. I think he enjoys that style of hockey. I think it gives him energy, and so I don't think he's disengaged in what he's doing on a third line. But I think another thing that keeps him engaged and builds his confidence is when the offense is coming. And so it's just this other half of his game that I don't think is consistently there enough on the third line. And that's where I think you can start to see his game get a little bit cold, go a little bit streaky. And that's the toughest part then, is you've seen what he's capable of at his best when he's playing in the top six off the wall. And right now the team has a need for a 3C.
Right. And it's hard because like I'm just looking here at not only what he's done with the Avs, what he had done in the past. Like, this is a guy, Meghan, with like real 20-goal upside. Like this can be a guy that can and should be really impactful for your lineup. And like you said, I do think he's got the right attitude. I don't think he's souring the room or anything like that. Like, far from that. Even.
Right.
But I just, it's been reported that there were some trade talks maybe over the summer that where his name came up. He makes $4 million against the cap. I don't know. If the Avs are making a big swing, maybe that's a guy that makes sense. I think he's a good enough player that, you try to find room in your lineup for him. I just don't know if they, A, have been able to, and B, if you're in a position to try to, we spoke so much in the summer about trying to build around him a bit in the bottom part of that lineup. Cool guy. And I think for as much of this roster that has really shaken out in the way that you want, and even what Ross Colton gives you next to guys like Val and Brock, I think it's all great, but I just don't think this has ever, I just don't think the plan for Ross Colton has ever fully fallen into place, and I'd be willing to bet you he would say that same thing.
And what's frustrating is it's not as if we didn't see the writing on the wall when they signed Olofsson, like, okay, another winger, cool. And then Joel Kiviranta extended, I'm like, fine, another winger. But, you were just entertaining the possibility of Olofsson maybe being like a Burakovsky scratch in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. No idea then where that leaves Joel Kiviranta, because we've kind of hoped on the fourth line being Drury, Kelly, OC again. Right. Now, maybe the OC of it all is where a Joel Kiviranta being an extra forward makes a lot of sense, because that does feel like it's a fourth line replacement. Basically what I'm saying is they never really addressed the 3C. And this isn't Jack Drury's fault either. He was supposed to be on that line with Kelly and OC again because it was really effective. I loved their body of work in the Dallas series. And so all that to say, this has been an issue going back to the summer, and it's not Jack Drury's fault. It's not Ross Colton's fault. They never really filled that question mark at the 3C spot. So that's going to be the biggest thing holding this up, because the type of player that could command a good return for a 3C is Ross Colton. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that he doesn't make sense in the Avs lineup, and it's not as if he can't help them a ton. It's not even what works best.
Right.
It's what works best for everyone.
He does also, like I said, $4 million cap hit. If you're looking to acquire a real impactful player, that's significant money that you can move. But it's a great call out. This has been something that we know has been on the radar since the summer. And I think there was maybe a couple of guys there saying, well, maybe they can fill those roles internally. And look, I also think that it's far from a foregone conclusion that Ross Colton's going to get moved here. I think there's a real world where he is on this team post-deadline.
I agree, because he still makes a lot of sense.
Totally.
To include, if there were an injury to their top six,
right,
he is a great fit there.
He's a guy that can plug right in. So I think it's, like I said, far from a foregone conclusion that he's going to get moved. But as we inch closer to these deadlines here, and you start to look around, as we start to kind of casually and loosely put together okay, what are we looking at here? What's the landscape? Who's out there? He is a name that unfortunately I keep finding myself circling back to, going, well, he might make sense there going back the other way. We'll have to wait and see. I want to talk about the power play. And let's hear from Jared Bednar today, who both acknowledged some of the recent struggles that it had and maybe some of those reasons why, but then how he feels about where it is right now as I think, you don't want to scare it away, but it looks clearly better right now than it did 2-3 weeks ago. So let's hear from Jared Bednar today during practice on the Avs power play.
Well, no, I mean, I like what we're doing right now. Okay, there was a big meeting last week. We changed some things around, got the guys on the same page, shared a bunch of ideas, and just kind of laid out the structure that we'd like to be in and what we'd like to do specifically. And it's going to change based on how the opponent kills and whatnot. We're still if they take something away, what else can we use? And we've been doing that all year, but I like the focus of our guys right now. They're all on the same page. So we've picked up, it's playing well. Like, we get the 2, and then we give some other guys some opportunities late in that game. So I think we ended up being 2 for 6. Didn't get one last game, and then we get a big one last night, So it's trending in the right way. But you wanted to see it be dangerous like every night, and that's to be determined,
How is putting Brock over there, is he doing the best Nico impression that you've had since Nico went? Is that the right fix for the whole thing?
Well, he's a big part of it, right? Center can take the left side draws, helps on the breakouts. He's making all the right decisions over on that side. Mikko's a special player, and in that spot on the power play, he's probably one of the best in the league, if not the best over there. And so, but you have to adjust. And now we've got a little bit of a different threat, right? We've got the right shot in Marty. So we've got the pieces to make it work, and they have the right mentality. So we just keep working on it, and they'll keep growing together now that we've kind of got this set. It looks good, and hopefully they can keep expanding off what we're doing.
It felt like when things weren't going well with the power play, just from watching from above it, I felt like more and more teams were like getting more aggressive with you guys.
Yeah.
Like it felt like the book was out, like, hey, pressure them.
Yep.
Screw up. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's all. I think all the time. Even if you just go through a couple games skid, they're going to come at you. Because they're, most teams, I'm assuming, they're pre-scouting your last 3 games. Special teams are probably going back to 5 or even maybe a little bit more. And if you're struggling over that time period with some pressure and one team has success. And I also think it's the way the penalty kills are trending too. Like their teams are getting more aggressive, us included, and it's working, If you're going to make a play, you're going to have to make it around that pressure and make it quick, and the next guy's coming, and so you might not get as much scoring chances, but if you get one, it's usually a good one. There could, because you're beating that pressure and you're getting an outnumbered situation someplace near the net. So I think you have to expect that. But I think our guys over the last couple of games have done a nice job sort of working around that, working quickly and getting more into attack mode, and coming to the net, converging to the net instead of skating away from it and being too perimeter.
All right, that was Jared Bednar talking about Avs Power play right now and some of the changes that have been made, personnel, guys like Brock Nelson, and then I liked the insight there at the end of, hey, not only are they seeing teams just kind of go to that in general, a more aggressive PK, but does kind of allude a little bit there to, like, hey, on those more aggressive PKs, if you can find a way to beat them, you're going to get a good look, which then subsequently backs guys off. We heard about the big meeting last week. What have you thought about the power play, let's say, in the last 7 days?
Yeah, I think there are a little bit of changes to the attitude around the power play. So I think starting with the entry, I think they recognize just how aggressive penalty kill units will try to pick them off from the blue line and make entry very difficult. And so the Avs, I think, ordinarily were trying to get the passing play off upon entry and trying for it too quickly, too suddenly, and it was getting picked off, reset, and that was how the time on the power play was spent. I think they're understanding that it's kind of like a muck and grind mentality for the entry, and then immediately put puck on net is the goal, right? Like, establish it deep, put puck on net, because you're hoping for a whistle and a face-off. Now that you're inside the zone, I think they operate quickly off the draw. And so that's the other takeaway, is more quick decisions inside the power play. And so I think there's less hesitation. There's just a little bit more trust in one another. And they're able to pivot quickly, though. Like, if a passing lane does get taken away, broken play, I think they're trying to pivot more quickly in anticipation of that happening and then the fight to win those pucks back. So I think they're getting less in their heads that the passing play is going to be perfect. It's okay if it isn't. They're prepared to get their hands a little bit dirty to win pucks back. I think Jared's mentioned, too, of them driving to interior ice, combined with making these decisions quickly to do so. and recognizing just put pucks on net. Like,
Mhm.
even if it's a rebound opportunity, you can get a stick on the lane for a tip in, or it's just a whistle and you get to try it all again. Those are still positive outcomes compared to eating the entirety of the power play passing to one another. So I think just there's an attitude change around all of those things that I just mentioned. It all still runs so much through McKinnon, but ultimately also Makar, I think, is a part of the equation too. I think that there was a level of predictability around how Makar was utilized on the power play that was getting picked up on by teams. And I think that they're not afraid of that anymore. I think they recognize what an asset Makar still is. And it's just the quickness of these decisions that's kind of countering any predictability that could be an issue here. And that's leaning then on the high IQ of McKinnon, the vision of Makar, and then Brock Nelson's just such a perfect complement. I do think he's absolutely also a part of the key ingredients that's making it work right now. I think he also adds a layer of something that's less familiar to some of what the PK is prepping for. Because forever, like, Corey asks about Mikko Rantanen. I think even Mikko Rantanen posed a similar problem of predictability at some point. And Mikko was at his best then on the power play later into his time with Colorado when he was moving the puck, acting more as a rover. That's kind of what Marty Netchis is doing now. That's why I think that he still serves a really good role on the power play, because there have been a couple plays where he baits guys into him below the goal line, and it's allowed them to get some of these quicker passing plays off. That's ultimately really hard for even aggressive penalty kills to pick up on if they're happening fast enough.
Well, and so I just wanted to pick up something there, as it relates to Brock Nelson and Mikko Rantanen and the predictability that you just talked about. After Mikko left, and like, look, we saw really good results from this power play at times in the regular season last year with Marty Netchis, Nathan McKinnon. But I do think we've talked a lot about it, that a lot of the struggles for this power play, in my opinion, have come from over predictability. We know roughly where the shots are going to come from. Maybe they'll get a tip or a rebound in front, bang one home. Maybe they'll slide one to the bumper. But for the most part, we know it's going to be Marty, it's going to be Nate, it's going to be Kale, and it's going to be from this rough area of the ice, because you didn't have that lefty one-timer threat on the ice, where it was like, teams were feeling pretty comfortable saying, we'll defend this half of the ice pretty strong because we don't think there's going to be much going on over there.
Right.
Brock Nelson, in addition to what you were just saying of like, suddenly here's a new look, like that threat for somebody to shoot on that half of the ice is back. And I know that maybe sounds overly simplified, but if you're a penalty kill and you have one fewer player than the other guy and you're trying to figure out how do we cover this extra ice, well, when the other team is making it easier for you by narrowing and limiting the areas on the ice from which they're choosing to shoot, that helps make up for the one guy that you're down. It's easier to get in lanes. It's more predictable. And so by just simply having a guy like Brock Nelson back on that half wall, who's just another option that defenses have to respect, might put this towards the net, like you said, with that more just shoot it mentality, that I think in and of itself has opened up other lanes and other opportunities that maybe weren't there 2-3 weeks ago when it was really righty heavy and your lefties were either in the bumper or in front of the net.
I think the power play so valued whatever their plan A was that they didn't want to have to turn to a plan B or C. They weighted it less. And now I think they are assigning more value to the plan B, the C, the contingency plans on the power play. One, because they are also still a really high threat to a penalty kill. And it's given them more options. And that's why, like, even the power play goal from last night, it's Nelson one-timing it from the slot because it all unfolds so quickly. He doesn't have time to get anywhere else on the ice. He already has 3 Toronto skaters closing in on him. While also still, those skaters are unsure. Is McKinnon just going to shoot from the left circle? Because he does like to do that too. And so I think that's where the Avs giving themselves more options is making it harder for penalty kills to know their next move, because McKinnon could have taken the shot option there, but he made a quick decision with his body to the net to give it to Brock instead, and Brock also made a quick decision. And I also think just the quality of his shot is a big part in all of this, because he was so stifled at the start of the year. I think people thought he kind of lost it. I don't think he's lost it, and it's just hard to contend with someone who has such a great shot, and Brock Nelson is playing some of his best hockey right now.
Yeah. Never let him know your next move. All right, we're going to round it out today, and we will probably have one, if not two shows as we approach, if not three shows by the time we get to March 7th.
Yes.
Where we're talking about trades and what are the trade boards looking like, who are some potential assets. But Megan, you and I just wanted to bring this up on today's show because 2 weeks in a row, Sportsnet 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman has, and it's been pretty loose. Like he's not drawing any hard lines anywhere, but Artemi Panarin's name, he's out. He's in the last year of his contract. Things aren't going great in New York, and there's some growing sentiment that he might be a guy that gets moved. Elliot Friedman did report that it sounds like maybe there was a little bit of a conversation behind the scenes of, hey, give us a list of teams that we can potentially work with here. Elliot Friedman did also 2 weeks in a row tie Colorado to Artemi Panarin if that were to come available. We're not going to speculate on that right now. I've reached out to a couple folks and it's mostly been like, what? No, so we're not going to speculate on any of that as far as it relates to Artemi Panarin. We mostly just wanted to draw some attention to the fact that, Megan, the trade deadline is March 7th. So you sit there and you go, 6 weeks at least. There is a trade freeze that goes into effect right before the Olympic break. By the time the Olympic break ends, we're probably talking 2 weeks at most till the actual trade deadline. You pointed out right before we went live, when did the Mikko Rantanen trade happen last year? Before the Four Nations trade freeze. This Avs front office has set a little bit of precedent that maybe they want to get some of this business done ahead of time. Trades maybe need to be a little bit more on folks' radar than it feels like as we have really kind of two deadlines here over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think looking at the trend of how the Avs have approached the deadline just the past couple of seasons, a lot has happened ahead of the deadline because they're very intentional about who they want. So it's not like going to Target where you can find dozens of things that you still have use for.
Right.
But the Avs have a very specific need in mind. And so it's the 3C spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine that we need to be bracing for something happening ahead of the deadline, probably pretty well in advance, because going back to what we just said about the Avs probably being aware this was a need in the summer, then they've been thinking about this for even longer than we have. So I imagine it's just going to be a matter of what gets it across the finish line. It's probably hard, and I'll be so frustrated, you guys. This is now back-to-back deadlines. They've needed a 3C, and it's just I just want to see them get it right and stick with it so that we're not looking at losing draft capital. Hello? Draft capital prospects, blah, 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 just for a temporary fix on the third line. Because I think that in looking at the success of Florida's third line in these last playoffs, that can be a really huge asset to a team in a deep playoff run too, especially like the wear and tear on leaning on your top guys. Every team deals with it in a different way. Anyways, depth obviously matters. JT Compher was so huge for the 2022 Cup for a reason. I think that they want to get this right. I will just be keeping an eye on my phone for a long time.
Yeah, and the one other thing that did come into my head is, you know who's on these rosters now. If someone who you're targeting as a 3C, and I'm going to pluck a name here. Again, I haven't heard it this year. It's a name that's been tied to the Avs in the past for this role. Let's say you like Boone Jenner. Okay, well, he's not going to the Olympics, and now you can go out and add a guy like that ahead of the trade freeze and give them that 3 weeks to get settled, get acclimated, get their family moved, whatever. I'm plucking Boone Jenner's name out of the hat because he's not going to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that was tied to the Avs last year.
You hated that when I proposed it this summer.
I did too. I still don't, for a 3C, it's fine. I hated the proposal that people were making for Boone Jenner to come be the 2C for this group. I think at a 3C, whatever. But I'm just grabbing his name because, like, that's not a guy that's going to the Olympics. Don't look at them. They can't help you. They can't help you make fun of me. But I'm just saying, if you wanted to add a guy and then say, hey, you got 3 weeks here, get your family settled, all that stuff, that could be something that they're looking at as well.
That could be something that they're looking at.
I'm picked on this show, guys. I'm bullied. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
Okay, give me your top 5 trade board right now. No, I'm kidding. That would be insane.
Wow.
That would be insane.
What if they cloned Brock Nelson?
I hadn't thought about that.
Just something to think about.
You know what we should actually do, and this is great podcasting, because we've talked about it. I don't even fully know market. Your market from now on. I don't even know fully, Megan, what the market is for centers out there right now. Like, there's so much parity in the East that, like, are any of these teams out of it to the point that they're selling? What does Ryan O'Reilly even cost? You know what I mean? Like I
That's an interesting question, because I'm even just seeing in murmurs of teams that are interested in being kind of both sellers, buyers. I'm like, really?
Right.
You're a buyer? I mean, if you say so, like, that's not my place, although I am market and I get to decide these things.
That's so true. Damn, that's so true.
But anyways, this is a great point then. What does the market actually look like for centers? Because I imagine too, the other half of it, part of it is, do they want an upgrade on D?
Right. Do you want an upgrade on Solovyov?
I haven't even been dissatisfied with Solovyov in the same way that I'm not dissatisfied with Jack Drury. It's just they're trying to build a contender that can go the distance, and those are the little nitpicks that we have of the roster at the moment. Right.
And, you know, just like I just look at the East, and so the last place team in the East is 7 points out of a playoff spot. And so you can maybe start to sit there and go, yeah, they're probably pretty much out of it. But if anybody's been paying attention to the Eastern Conference this year, it literally takes a good week and any of these teams are suddenly right back in it because the East is just so meh.
Yeah.
That, like, I do wonder at what point some of these teams start to say, okay, we're out of it. We're just out of it this year. And this is the last thing that I'm going to float out there. And then I don't have anything else on this show. And it's purely just me wondering, because what the hell is happening in New Jersey right now? That'd be a pretty huge upgrade if you went out and tried to find a way to add Dougie Hamilton. That might mean that there's someone else going out.
This is where I was like, you know who might see the value of Bardakov? Not single-handedly.
Right, not one for one.
Right, I just want to be so clear. Is the team that probably feels they missed the mark on it.
Like they were a little bamboozled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is New Jersey.
Know.
So I don't know. You know, I say that to make the point of, like, there's intriguing names that are being thrown out there. But again, when you look at this current landscape, I think it's a little bit muddier than it has been in the past. So again, like, I just threw out Ryan O'Reilly's name. Suddenly Nashville's 2 points out of a playoff spot. Are they going to be getting frisky in the seller market? I don't know. You know, Chicago got Connor Bedard back. Are they back to believing in their season? Anaheim has hit a little bit of a skid here. Whoa, big skid. You know, how do they see what they're doing here? Like, I just don't know how teams feel about the seasons they're having, to the point where I'm not sure who's a buyer, who's a seller, and who would even be realistically available right now.
Yeah. San Jose was the one I was thinking of that I'd heard, like, as described as both a seller and a buyer. And I was like, okay, if you say so.
If you feel like it, okay. And then, of course, you know, you got Calgary, who I think everyone was considering to be a bit of a seller coming into the year. But, like, they're not terribly far out. How does that front office feel about what's happening up there? I just don't know. And I think teams are going to start having to make decisions on that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think the Olympic break will force some of this to happen sooner, like you were saying.
I agree. Okay, anything else?
No, that's it for real this time.
That's it. That was my fault. She said no, and I made us keep going. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. We're both behind the glass today because we're just doing all of it. Back at it on Friday. No games until Friday. So we will talk to you guys a bunch on Friday. Mailbag coming in between now and then. But thank you guys so much for listening, liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, all of it. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.